You don't have to, but you're welcome.
I wasn't gonna be able to do it this past
That's
week.
right, that's right.
But I can do it now.
Recognize that.
There's the road.
Don't worry.
That's right, we had,
Doesn't really matter.
all these are roads.
You good? Okay. Welcome back, everyone that's been watching at home. We reconfigured the meeting room a little bit. Tonight's discussion, this is a brief for council. Council has not heard since the public hearings, I believe. An update on the Wythe Creek Road project. Just to basically lay in a little background. I guess we, originally and please correct me if I get this wrong, but as we had originally, the original concept had basically a passage across the marshy area there between us and Hampton that was more like a cofferdam or basically a solid enclosure, very similar to what it is today. Because of the soils, that became cost restrictive. And a bridge is necessary, and because of that, the overall cost of the project actually increased to a point where end up with $16 million over budget, I believe was the number. And so we started working and looking between us and Hampton and VDOT at what was an acceptable way of scaling the project back. And we're here to get a briefing of that this evening. And so Mark and Bruce, we're used to y'all coming to us. Sir, I don't think I did, I met you back here like I'd seen you before, but could you let us know?
My name is Wes Parker. I'm with Clark Nexon.
Great, okay. And we're great to have y'all back, and just let us know what's going on.
Absolutely.
All right?
Sure. Well, I guess I'll start off.
Okay.
My name is Mark Velasquez. I'm a VDOT project manager for the Wythe Creek Road project. I guess with me, just so we can introduce everybody, I met Wes. This is Ian Johnston, Clark Nexon. And then this is Bruce Duvall, who's my boss over at VDOT, manager of the project management office. I'm sort of going to go over where we've been since our last meeting with you guys. The last time you probably saw most of us was at the last council work session, which was probably in October of 2013. We presented the initial scope of the project to you guys, and at the time, we were looking at a widening from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. It was starting pretty much in front of the NASA gate down in Hampton at Langley Boulevard, and it was going to extend northward up through the causeway, over the bridge, and into Poquoson, and it was going to end just north of Huntlandia Way, which is right now where the roadway widens from 2 lanes out to 5 lanes. So pretty much everywhere it was 2 lanes, we were going to make it 4 lanes. After we had that work session with you guys, we held that citizen information meeting that you mentioned earlier, where we presented the project to the public, anybody who wanted to come out. And we felt like it was pretty positive in general. There were a few homeowners who were directly impacted, obviously, that you'd have with any widening project that weren't happy, but overall I think it went pretty well. Probably a month or 2 after that, which was November, December of 2013, our geotechnical engineer came back to us, and they revealed that the soils out there were a lot worse than we had anticipated. Bad enough that when Clark Nexon had looked at other design alternatives, and they went through several, the cheapest that you'd mentioned earlier, or the least expensive, was to extend the bridge. And just so that you have an idea of the scale of that, the original scope was just to replace the bridge that's out there right now. And the bridge that's out there right now is about 115 feet long. And what we're looking at now is a 1,400-foot long bridge that goes all the way out throughout the causeway. So obviously that would increase the cost considerably. And like you mentioned before, and I guess you can go to the next slide. If you take a look at the second column from the left, $42.6 million was the original cost estimate for the project. And it went up due to the soils and due to the extension of the bridge, it went up by about $17.4 million. So the cost estimate all the way to your left is the new cost estimate, $60 million for the entire project. Now, at that point, we did 2 things that you had touched on earlier. One is that we, being VDOT and Clark Nexon, started looking at different alternatives for the design. we still wanted to maintain the purpose of the project, which was to widen the roadway and to elevate the roadway throughout the causeway, but come up with different ideas that would bring that cost estimate back down to where we needed. The second item that we did, and we being VDOT and city officials at this time, was we started looking for opportunities for additional funding. And the best opportunity for additional funding came in October of 2014. The Hampton Roads Transportation Planning Organization, the HRTPO, they had a meeting where they had a pot of federal funding in fiscal year 2021. And that sounds far away, but in terms of this project, it's actually when we would be constructing this project. So myself, Bruce, Ellen Roberts from the city of Poquoson, and I think it was John Yorks from the city of Hampton, we all went to that meeting, and I think we made a pretty passionate argument on behalf of this project. And although we didn't get all 17.4 million, we got some money. We got $7 million. So that brought us to a deficit now. Instead of 17.4 million, we were now 10.4 million short. So we went back to the alternatives that we had investigated earlier, and one of those rose to the top. And that's really what we're presenting to you today, is what we think is the best alternative that actually brings us back closer to within budget. And essentially, our original scope of the project was a widening from 2 lanes to 4 lanes. This is a widening from 2 lanes to 3 lanes, but it's not just a regular 3-lane widening. There's actually some interesting operational components to it. And I'm going to go ahead and let Clark Nexon explain to you what those interesting components are.
Okay. So what we're talking about is a reversible lane concept. So as Mark indicated, we're going from a 4-lane to a 3-lane section and talking about taking that center lane and reversing it for the peak period. That's the reversible concept. And this works well when you have a 70-30 directional split in traffic. So with Creek Road in Hampton and Poquoson, very heavy commuter heading southwards in the morning, reverse in the PM. It works well. So in this situation, you would dedicate 2 lanes south in the morning, 2 lanes north in the evening, and in the off-peak periods, which would be beyond the morning, basically after 9 a.m. to noon, or excuse me, 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., that center lane could operate as an opposing left turn lane as an option. So the project is set up very well for this option based on the way traffic operates along the corridor. What we'll do first is get into the cost savings. What's occurring with this concept and how do we achieve the cost savings? First off, and we'll focus on Hampton, that's where the majority of the cost increase is and where the majority of the savings are. We have right-of-way savings due to a pending property transfer with NASA. NASA's working very close with VDOT to transfer the property out front of the fence line in order to allow the alignment to shift further to the east. That's a big benefit. We're, of course, eliminating the raised medians between Commander Shepard and Voyager. You typically see those when you have a 4-lane divided highway. We're now taking away the division, and it's going to be a 3-lane undivided roadway. Reduce right-of-way impacts on the west side of the alignment. We've got some slides that will show you that you'll be able to really visualize what we're talking about there. And of course, when you're talking about going from 4 lanes down to 3, reduced pavement, drainage, infrastructure, there's a reduction in cost there. And then of course the bridge. The bridge is the most expensive project element, as Mark indicated. You're reducing the width of the bridge. Good savings there. Next slide. So this is just an overview of the cost savings that we've estimated. About $2.5 million. Again, this is in Hampton. $2.5 million in the pavement, earthwork. Bridge savings, 2.6. We have a additive item of $600,000. That's for signalization, and we'll get into that in a minute related to the reversible concept. So that's a total construction savings of $4.5 million. And when you escalate that to 2018, which is when we're planning to advertise the project for construction, that's a $5 million savings. The right-of-way savings is pretty significant. Just the property, the land itself, $450,000. The building value's been estimated at 1.5, and then all of the various administrative savings costs, such as relocation assistance, administration, condemnation hearings, those have been estimated at 1.1. So when you roll all this up, grand total savings of $8.4 million in Hampton alone. Next. Okay. Talking about Poquoson, we're talking about reducing the typical section or the roadway width 5 foot on either side. Again, taking away that 4th lane. And so with the reduced pavement and drainage costs there. Also anticipating savings related to not impacting the HRSD force main to the south end of the project in Poquoson. Taking these savings into account, we figured about $800,000 in the pavement, earthwork, road construction savings, but then the additive cost for the ITS, Intelligent Transportation Systems components that are related to the reversible, you get a savings of about $100,000. And then with the property, as shown below, we estimated about $400,000. So rolling all this up, go ahead and hit the button. We're now at $8.9 million, call it $9 million in savings, realizing that we had that $10.4 million shortfall that we're trying to close. So it gets us very close.
Very close. Thank
Yep.
you.
Okay. So this is the visual of how we're saving. This is the old section that we showed at the public meeting back in November of 2013. This is the 4-lane divided. This is actually right at Voyager. You can see what happens here. The yellow highlight is the pavement. We're significantly reducing the footprint of the project. Coming off the building there, that's the HVAC business there, pulling away from it. Just on the north side of Voyager, same deal. Substantial difference.
The one thing that I know a couple council people will focus on, sidewalks.
Yes.
Still incorporated into the design?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep. In Hampton, currently proposed to have an 8-foot sidewalk that extends down through the length of the project. In Poquoson, 8-foot sidewalk plus a 5-foot walk.
Thank you.
Here's the shot in Poquoson, the 8-foot walk on the west side, the 5 on the east. So this is a section along Wythe Creek in Poquoson. I think this is house numbers 270 in that range. This is where, a cluster of about 4 properties that are right there closest to the roadway. You see the reduction here.
Go back one more time.
Yep.
Okay. And I believe those were 4 of the properties that were probably most significantly impacted during the public hearing process, I believe. Is that correct?
Yeah, they certainly had concerns. It really, if you take a look on that side of the roadway, we can build the improvements within the existing right-of-way. Now, there would likely be some easements required to allow the contractor to get in there and construct, but you can see it's a significant reduction. And again, what we're trying to achieve here is splitting the property acquisition between both sides of the roadway. You see the house on which is the east side, which is the bottom of the screen here. We're trying to equalize the acquisition on both sides of the roadway, so we're still achieving that.
And utilities, as far as relocation of utilities still required?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Yep. We've got overhead power, telephone, cable. Those are going to have to be relocated. There's a water line, an 8-inch water line that's out there that needs to be. We're anticipating full relocation of that, as well as the force main. There's an HRSD force main. All those facilities still require relocation, regardless of the 4-lane footprint or the 3. This is out front of McPherson's garage. You can see a drastic decrease here. Okay. Next slide. Okay, so what I'm going to do is hand it over to Wes, and Wes is going to talk about how the 3-lane three-lane roadway would operate.
Okay, so basically our general concept with reversible lanes is they are relatively unique throughout the United States. They are done, and we're going to show you some examples here through many different municipalities. But something that's key here is the way that we're proposing to implement this is according to standard federal guidelines. So that's what I'm going to kind of show you here. We'll implement it through the use of pavement markings, lane use control signals, and also static sign panels. So your lane use control signals, and they're actually starting to put these on the interstates locally on 264 on the south side, basically will designate which lane is open for use given the different time of day. And static panels will supplement that so that people will know, okay, traditionally that lane is open between this hour and this hour. The nice thing about the dynamic lane control signs is it also gives you the ability to utilize them for different types of situations such as hurricane evacuations and things of that nature, something that wouldn't be standard or used. Operationally, this is just picking one spot along the corridor. You would have an overhead mast arm very similar to a traffic signal pole that's going to span the roadway over top of the 3 lanes, and it would house technically 6 dynamic faces. So you would display the X's on the lanes that were not going to be used and the green arrows on the lanes that are going to be used. The AM peak hour concept between about 7 and 9 a.m. We're going to have 2 lanes going southbound and 1 lane going northbound. During the non-peak hour, pretty much between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m., at least as of right now, we're proposing to have it as a reverse or a 2-way left-hand turn lane, so that basically residents or business people that are going to any of the houses or commercial properties along the corridor can turn into that middle lane and wait for a gap to make that left into the property or business. And then lastly, in the PM peak hour, it will be 2 lanes going northbound with 1 lane going southbound. Before I briefly mention that these are done throughout the United States, these are just a few examples of the best ones that we've seen that are out there. Maryland has it. There are several around Washington, D.C. Macon, Georgia, which we have some pictures here in a second, is a very nice one. Houston, Texas, Charlotte, and also Newport News, Virginia does operate one outside of the shipyard
I'm
there.
very familiar with River Road, so
There you go, yeah.
travel
So-
it all the time.
So, and you can see here too, this isn't just done for 3-lane sections. A lot of times outside of stadiums or NFL football stadiums, basketball stadiums, they'll do this to help handle that really peak directional flow in and out of the areas. The Texas lanes are actually used for that situation.
When we get that pro basketball team.
This is Vineville Avenue in Macon, Georgia. The picture's a little bit blurry here, but the reason why we wanted to show you these pictures is of all of them, this is one of the most recent installations. From the data we found, and we're still trying to get in contact with their city traffic engineer, this system has been around since the late 90s, and they've actually reinstalled it again, as you can see here with these signs. But this corridor looks very similar in a very non-technical way to the Pocosin corridor. We have residential houses along the corridor. What we would propose is a decorative type pole, this black pole here, possibly a fluted black pole, but those are all details to be worked out far later, just so it blends in better with the environment. So you can see here it'd be 3 lanes. Ignore the sidewalks, obviously. The sidewalks will look a lot better for this project. But we're focusing on, the overhead mast arm here. As we're getting closer now, you can kind of see a close-up. So you've got your 2 red X's. You can see for this particular period, we've got 1 lane going into the screen, and obviously the 2 lanes behind them are coming towards us, or that center lane can be the 2-way left-hand turn lane like we talked about. Those pictures previously were the residential corridor. Here's an example of this operation, same road, Vineville Avenue, Macon, Georgia, in a very urban corridor with commercial businesses. You can see they've got dozens of commercial entrances along the corridor, and they're still operating the system. The most important concept with implementing any intelligent transportation system, but particularly this, is trying to figure out what the drivers are going to be expecting and wanting. So it's really hard to see here, but every overhead mast arm, when you get directly underneath of it, you'll have visual cues for the next one downstream. So there'll never be a point of time where you enter or exit that corridor where you can't see downstream these lane control signals. And that's just a safety situation. Question that may be coming to mind, can this be done around signalized intersections? Yes, it can. In Hampton, we have 2 signalized intersections as proposed, and this is, again, the same corridor at a signalized intersection. Essentially, and the details, we could talk about it if you guys want to later. But basically, that middle lane turns, you have a stop bar that goes across, and the directional use arrows are downstream here, and then they're actually directly underneath where this picture was taken from. This is another example for West Alabama Street in Texas. This is a good example. You can see here the middle, well, it's very blurry for you all, but the middle signal is a 2-way left-hand turn symbol that you saw in the previous graphic. So that's just showing a 3-lane section that can be done along this corridor.
Before we open it up to questions, I'd just like to offer up that you don't typically see these types of installations on new construction. What you'll typically see them is retrofit of existing roadways. But certainly, in today's environment, this is certainly a plausible solution for this particular application. It's in the MUTCD, the Manual of Uniform Traffic Control Devices. It's endorsed by the Federal Highway Administration. It is certainly a good option for this alignment based on the commuter traffic that uses the roadway. We think it sets up very well for the project.
Okay, questions of council?
Just a comment, Langley Air Force Base has been using the same concept for, I'm gonna guess, 20 years on their main thoroughfares into and out of the Air Force Base.
Right. What happens during a power outage? What do those signals do during a power outage?
So the signal systems would be on a backup system. That's the way we would design the system. So when you have a power outage, you would have a generator backup.
So they would still operate like they're supposed to?
Yes.
Wouldn't go into
Now,
a flashing mode or anything like that?
correct. Now, there's always situations where the backup, may fail as well, and that's when police operations, or you would hope that police operations would come in and operate.
We changed the right-of-way on Yorktown Road and Hunts Neck several years ago. We had 10 accidents before people got used to it.
Oh, yeah.
My son was one of them.
What's the approximate spacing between the, whatever you call those things, the signals?
Mast.
Somebody pulls on what's the figure, somebody pulls on the road.
Yep.
In between them, how quick will they know what they're supposed to be doing?
As we've laid out right now, they're about, I believe, about 800 feet. But as we get into design, this is very high-level preliminary design. We're going to get in and we're going to do field verification of the signs to make sure that we can see them, as I said earlier, from everywhere that you come onto the corridor. So we're not just looking at this from a mainline perspective of someone driving through the corridor, but every driveway, all of these signs have to be visible. Manual uniform traffic control devices, federal highways, you can actually go up to 2,000 feet with these lane use control signs. We're not necessarily going to propose that here because we want to be more conservative than that. But you can see them spaced pretty far apart on some corridors.
I think people would prefer 2,000 feet than
Yeah.
800 for the large part. I had a question about, do we have control of the hours? Is the, 7 to 9 and 4 to 6, is that a rule, or is that something that we could work with if we decided it would be better?
Yeah, it really comes down to operations. So once VDOT constructs the project and hands that over, I think the city of Hampton currently controls your signal systems. Perhaps that would still occur here, but it really depends on the locality, on what the actual operations are out there. So there is no law or regulation that says must be from 7 till 9. That could certainly vary based on the needs of the locality. That's typically what you see in the Hampton Roads region.
Agree, and just to let council know, we've kind of briefed, we had only the concept, not the briefing that we've had here tonight, but the concept, and we've generally shared that with Hampton, and of course, they've had our backs basically the entire time, and very willing to work. In fact, I think they were very pleased with this. So as far as working out changes in signalization, changes in like the center turn lane, it's not just, after the rush hour in the evening, we could convert it back to center lane, two-way, which is probably 80% of the time that it's running. So just handles the rush hour volume and then gets back to what people consider a normal standard set. But I can tell you, if you haven't driven one of these, it's intuitive. If you go down River Road, even you can figure out how to get in the shipyard. Okay? So.
Except they won't let you in.
Yeah, well, you can get in the parking lot. You can get in the parking lot. But it's very easy to see and very easy to read. But I've been using them for years. That's why I was excited when y'all said that. So.
I think the good news, and like I said, the roadway users along this corridor, I mean, they're folks who live in the area. They drive this road every day. It's not like a Virginia Beach Boulevard. So the learning curve will be probably a day, if that. And then as part of the design and the public outreach, there would be a public outreach effort for the community, and this is how these systems operate. These are the things you need to be looking out for. We would go through that process.
And it would leave our main corridor with a neighborhood feel. I think that's the big thing that we need to recognize. And, it's kind of like the trade-off of, there's a little bit of driver getting used to it versus the impact and the visual that you've got for the rest of your lives, whereas you've got the road right up on people's houses. So, when I look at that and I look at the examples you've given us, that's exactly what I see as a neighborhood feel.
Yeah.
And I just see this as a win-win for us. But go ahead.
Did the $1 million that was short with the redesign, does that include the $7 million that the TPO was willing to give, or
That's correct. That
still includes that?
Yes.
So we're still short $1 million.
short $1 million.
Short $1 million.
Yeah.
And we've engaged Secretary of Transportation on that for potentially a safety type grant. Okay, so we've got at least 3 or 4 ideas on how to get the extra $1 million.
One thing I want to indicate too with these estimates, we're still very preliminary into design. We have contingencies built into the estimates. So once we proceed, we may find that $1 million gap closes as we get into the actual utility locations, depths, and really start doing that design. So we've been very, I would say, we've considered a lot of things with the estimate. We've taken into consideration escalation. We've added contingencies. So I think we're, that $1 million could disappear.
Could vanish.
Potentially.
Henry, you had something?
Well, I do. I know that we're trying to tighten the budget now, but just from my own thought process, when they relocate the utilities, did they do an analysis on what it would cost to bury those utilities?
No, sir. There was not an analysis to underground the utilities. You're talking about the overheads, but history says that would be very expensive. It's a very expensive proposal. It would certainly, that $1 million would.
That's what I'm looking at. Looking at long term, and it would truly save long term.
Yeah.
I got one more comment on that. Again, Bruce Duvall, just responding to that question, is also in order for a project using federal or state funds to consider project costs to be put towards undergrounding, the corridor has to be identified as an underground corridor, which requires council support and also, I believe, an ordinance to be established. Other than that, without that corridor being established as an underground utility corridor, we're not allowed to entertain that as part of that.
What are the rules about water table depth to become an underground corridor, or to have one? I would assume.
No, it's not.
No?
Mm-hmm.
I have one more question too about the sidewalks and the bike path comparison between the original plan and the new option. Can you repeat yourself on that? I know you mentioned it.
Yeah. So The proposed design includes an 8-foot walk, okay, which will be wide enough for bicyclists to utilize, and pedestrians. That's currently proposed to be on the west side of the roadway alignment in Poquoson to match the existing walk that's to the north. We're proposing a 5-foot sidewalk on the east side, and that matches the section to the north as well. We're currently proposing to cross the 8-foot path over at Carey's Chapel, at the signal location there, at the Carey's Chapel with intersection, and then run it on the east side of the alignment, down south and out in front of the NASA Langley, where we would expect there would be a number of folks accessing NASA Langley through that.
So they wouldn't have
8-foot
to
walk.
cross traffic when they got to work.
Correct.
Gotcha.
Would there be a 5-foot sidewalk on the bridge as well?
Just the 8-foot walk.
Just the 8-foot, so you would have to cross traffic to get
Well,
from the east side?
in Poquoson.
Yes.
So we're on the west side in Poquoson, we're crossing over, this is the 8-foot walk now.
Okay.
We're crossing over at Carey's Chapel and then heading south.
So in other words, if you want to bike to NASA,
Yeah.
which we do have some people that want to do that, that they will be on the left side they'll be on the right side to turn into NASA without crossing traffic once they get there.
They're crossing at the traffic lights.
Agree. In Hampton, they will be on the right side. They will have already, before they get into Hampton, they will have crossed over.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
And those 13 feet of sidewalk are proposed or were proposed in the original proposal, 13 feet?
The original proposal had a 10-foot walk and a 5-foot walk.
So we are losing.
So
Okay.
that was actually one of the value engineering proposals, was to reduce from 10 to 8, and I believe the 8 matches the section to the north, also reduces right-of-way impact.
Randy, you had something?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. First of all, I just want to say what a pleasure it has been to work with these guys, to include Hampton, NASA, who's not just cheering, but helping make it happen.
Right.
Air Force Base, York County. And it really represents a change in the way VDOT is doing business in the last few years. I mean, look, the 64 widening project is another example. Where we stand, just to restate, the project has a $10 million deficit if we go to construction in 2018. We don't have $10 million. The TPO hasn't stated that they're going to provide more money, and Hampton's told us they don't have that kind of money. So each year that the project doesn't go forward, you have to work in the inflation as well. So we're at this point where we risk the project bogging down, or we need to grab an option to move it forward. One of those options is to find a way to come up with $10 million. Another is some sort of scope change. So I appreciate this. I'm mindful that the first letter, the correspondence that I ever wrote, I think, on this project to VDOT was suggesting, how about a 3-lane section in Poquoson? So it's old home week on that idea. But as I look at this option, and as you look at it, I think first and foremost for Poquoson, why does this matter to us? This matters to us because in a tidal event, we got one way in and out of this city. This will solve that problem. Beyond that, it deals with the peak flow issues, both going to NASA Langley and coming back. Keeps building. It builds on the pedestrian, our hope for pedestrian accommodation. It keeps it on budget and keeps it on schedule. And when we had our community meeting, for those that weren't just totally good with it, the most common response we got was try to shrink its footprint. This does that. And when we went through the TPO process, as Bruce described it, collectively, I say we, it was really VDOT and the City of Hampton ourselves. We didn't get everything we asked for. They essentially sent us back and said, you all need to get some more skin in the game. Now, I can't predict what they're going to do, but should the two localities with VDOT agree to the scope change, I think it gives us extra ammunition to go back through the TPO process and say, you challenged us to solve our problem. We got 90% of it. Can you help us with the remaining 10? And so I think, while we can't guarantee that I think it's closer than we ever could. If it stays at that $1.5 million delta, which is obviously an open question because these are preliminary estimates. If we had no other choices, we've got the state revenue sharing program, which could provide 50%, and we've got Hampton and we've got Poquoson to solve the other half together. So we've gone from a $10 million, more than $10 million delta to one that is manageable. If the city council and Hampton are desirous of this is the way forward. If not, we've got to do some real soul searching on what's next, because we're getting to that point that, and I don't want to put words in your mouth, Bruce, but
I want to slow it down.
if we can't afford this project in the end, at some point, we need to stop until we can, because you'll recall, if the project doesn't go forward, the communities collectively need to start reimbursing that money. So we are at a real interesting point, and this is so important to our community that we slowed down to come and make this presentation so the public would know what we're considering, and so that you would. And ultimately, and you don't need to make this decision today, but we need to know, VDOT needs to know, are we comfortable with the scope change as a city so they can continue or not? And that really frames it.
That's good framing, but I want to take that framework one step further, because as council knows, the next thing that we're engaged upon with York County is Victory Boulevard, okay? And, we've got a strategy with York County. Again, we've got the support of Hampton. We've got the support of the bases. We have a visit here on April 2nd that kind of will reinforce that. That basic need, and what we don't want to do is set the wrong tone of, well, we're in or we're out. So I think we can do all the roads that Poquoson needs in and out of the city here in the next 5 to 10 years for the foreseeable future, but we don't want to stumble on this decision too much. Hampton is looking for our head nod. The sooner we can get them that, this goes off their plate, they're very comfortable. Of course, it makes a difference to us, it makes a difference to them as well, but they are truly, for the investment terms of dollars that we're talking about, here's a larger investor looking for the small one saying, will that work for you? If that will work for you, that will work for us. They're the ones taking the major downplay in the money. And I just think it's a great teaming environment that we've got, and I just don't want to break that up. And I go back to what you said to start with. We always started with, what about 3 lanes? So we went from 3 to 5. Then I think you and I arm wrestled to 4. And and then we are looking at what our original concept was with some engineering that I think our citizens will actually enjoy. I think they'll get it. So, any other questions? Thank you all so much for coming. That's been great. I have to echo with what Randy has said. It's been a great teaming environment here between us and VDOT, and we really appreciate it. We look forward to working with you as we continue to push this envelope.
Sure.
Okay?
Thank you.
All right. Thanks.
Thank you.
Special items for the evening.
Okay. Council, y'all want to have any other discussion, or you want to think about it a while on both issues?
I'm ready to go. Me too. Let's do it. I'm ready to see the shovel hit the ground.
Okay. All right. So
Come out.
what do we need formally to move that?
It can be as simple, Mr. Mayor, to answer
Resolution?
your question. It can be as simple as a letter, but since we've got a little bit of time, might I suggest we go ahead and formalize that in a resolution for next time?
Okay.
Basically consenting to the scope alternative,
Okay.
and then you can formally consider that at your next meeting.
Okay. And go ahead and draft a letter, because from what I can tell here, it's looking very positive. Okay. So go ahead and draft a letter so we could sign it the same night.
Yes, sir.
Okay? All right, and I'll be talking to y'all in the next few days about urban archery and your desires there.
But before we get off, Mr. Mayor, if I could, for those that are watching at home, if you're interested to see either one of the PowerPoint presentations, they are linked on our website, and I apologize, if you looked on Friday, the VDOT one wasn't there. We didn't get it till today, but it is there now, if anyone would like to see it, if some of that was difficult to see on the screen.
Okay? All right, thank y'all very much. And this is adjourned.